Hello everyone. Today we'll discuss about one of the theory of learning. But before that, let's talk about what is learning. So learning is one of the fundamental concepts of psychology. It refers to a relatively permanent change in behavior and knowledge that occurs as a result of practice and experience.
Psychologists study learning to understand how individuals acquire new knowledge, skills, habits, attitude, and ways of thinking. In the field of educational and experimental psychology, different theories have been proposed to explain how learning takes place. One of the earliest and most influential among them is Edward Lee Thorndike's trial and error learning theory. This theory emphasizes learning occurs through a gradual process of attempting various responses until the correct one leads to success. It highlights the importance of motivation, repetition, and reinforcement in the shaping behavior. This module introduces the concept of learning in psychology and focuses Thorndike's trial and error theory, its key principles, experimental basis, and educational implications. Through this module, you will gain a deeper understanding of how experience and effort lead to learning and behavioral modification. So, learning is a process of acquiring modifications in existing knowledge, skills, habits, or tendencies through experience, practice, or exercise. In simple words, learning is relatively permanent change in behavior or knowledge that occurs as a result of practice or experience. There are so many theories of learning in psychology. For example, classical conditioning theory by Pavlov, operant conditioning theory by B.F. Skinner, insight learning theory by Kohler. Like this, another learning theory is trial and error learning theory, a very important concept in the field of educational psychology introduced by Edward Lee Thorndike.
Now let's talk about who is Thorndike.
So, Edward Lee Thorndike was an American psychologist often called as the father of educational psychology for his experiment and contribution to the field of learning. He is best known for his experiments on animal learning. In the year 1890s, he introduced his famous trial and error learning theory, which is based on his famous puzzle box experiment with cats. Trial and error learning.
So what is trial and error learning theory?
It is a theory that explains how learning occurs through repeated attempts to solve a problem until a successful solution is found. It is a method of learning in which an individual tries different responses to a problem, and through repeated attempts, errors are gradually eliminated until the correct solution is found. In simple words, we can say that we learn by doing and by making mistakes until we succeed.
Now let's learn about the experiment, which is also known as the puzzle box experiment.
Thorndike explained his theory through his famous puzzle box experiment. For this experiment, he placed a hungry cat inside a box, and outside the box, the food was kept. The logic was that the cat has to escape before it could get the food. In this process, the cat made a series of efforts to get the outside, and there was only one door which could be opened by correctly manipulating or pressing a lever. A fish was placed outside the box, and the smell of the fish worked as a strong motive for the hungry cat to come out of the box. The cat made every possible efforts like biting, scratching, meowing. In this way, eventually by chance, the cat pressed the lever. The cat came out and got the food, the fish. The process was repeated several times. Thorndike observed that the time it took the cat to escape gradually decreased. The process was repeated several times. Thorndike observed that the time it took the cat to escape gradually decreased. The cat learned how to open the door and associated the correct action, the response, with the satisfying consequences, which means getting the food, and it stopped performing the irrelevant, unsuccessful behaviors. This shows that learning happens gradually through trial and error.
Now let's talk about the laws of learning from this experiment.
Thorndike gave 3 laws of learning in his trial and error learning theory. The first law is law of readiness. It states that learning becomes effective only when the learner is physically, mentally, and emotionally prepared to act or learn. If the learner is ready to act, the learning is satisfying. Forcing them may lead to frustration or failure. For example, a student who is interested in drawing will learn art skills quickly because he or she is emotionally, mentally ready or motivated to learn. And if we talk about the law of readiness in the experiment, the cat's hunger created readiness, making it motivated to act. Now, let's talk about the law of exercise. This law emphasizes the role of practice. It states that a stimulus and response are connected by repetition. The stronger the association becomes. In simple words, we can say that practice makes learning stronger. Thorndike divided it into 2 parts, law of use and law of disuse. The law of use says that repetition strengthens learning, and the law of disuse says that lack of practice weakens learning. For example, solving sums regularly helps students remember formulas or steps, while without regular practice they may forget the methods. And again, if we talk about the law of exercise in the experiment, with the repeated trial, the cat learned how to open the door. Now, let's talk about the third law, the law of effect. This law states that responses followed by satisfaction or pleasant experience more likely to be repeated, while responses by discomfort are likely to be less repeated. For example, when a student answers a question correctly and receives praise from the teacher, they are more likely to be participate again. And if we talk about the law of effect in the experiment, the cat by chance pressed the lever that opens the door. This action is correct response, and the consequences of correct response is satisfying one. The cat escaped and get the food.
Now let's talk about their educational implications and how it is useful in education.
Thorndike's theory of trial and error and laws of learning have great educational significance. Thorndike's findings have made learning purposeful and goal-oriented. First, let's talk in the sense of law of readiness. The teacher should ensure that students are ready to learn before introducing new lessons. The learning material should be matched the age, interest, and the ability of learners. Next, overloading or forcing a student to learn when unprepared leads to frustration or poor result. Now, let's talk in the sense of law of exercise. Regular practice, repetition, and revision are essential for permanent learning. Learning should not be stopped after a single exposure. Continuous practice retains knowledge and skill. Activities like homework, quiz, and revision session help strengthen connection between stimulus and response. Now let's talk in the sense of law of effect. Teachers should provide positive reinforcement, for example, prize, reward, encouragement, etc. for correct responses. Create a pleasant and motivating learning environment to increase interest and success. Success and satisfaction enhance learning, so lessons should allow learner to experience achievement. To conclude, we can say that trial and error learning is the simplest yet most powerful way of learning. It emphasizes that learning is a gradual process based on repeated attempts, practice, and the selection of the successful response. Learners learn by making mistakes and gradually eliminating errors until the correct solution is found. It reminds us that a mistake are not failures but stepping stones to success.
Thank you for watching.